Chapter 24-26. The Big Fight. Ling Dan, do you mean you want to bear the brunt of the attack? Do you think you can stop me? Pang Dao coldly challenged. Well, let's find out. Ling Dan was not too afraid. If that's the case, I'll first maim you then kill the kid. Pang Dao aimed his first shot as soon as he finished speaking. Swoosh. A phantom-like figure swept around violently and dived down along with the emergence of a remarkable sword essence. The sword essence dissipated far and wide as it instantly covered the entire area, just as though a huge ocean of sword essences filled the area between the heavens and earth. Everyone was immersed within that sword essence ocean. This sword essence is not bad. Jian Wushuang secretly nodded. Just from his sword essence alone, he could see that Pang Tao's sword principle understanding had already reached the profound sword principle realm. In fact, he had been at that level for some time and was not far from achieving complete sword principle realm. Pang Tao's figure suddenly appeared from the sword essence. The moment he appeared, slash, 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 3 beams of sword lights gleamed. Those 3 sword light beams were dazzling, each of them obscuring the heavens and the sun, attracting the attention of everyone present. So glaringly bright. Are these sword lights? Why do I feel like there are 3 suns? It's so dazzling and very powerful. Many had to close their eyes as the sword light flashed and blinded their sights. Senior brother Ling Dan, Shuabing's complexion slightly changed. Pang Tao's strength had exceeded her expectations and she was worried about Ling Dan. Don't worry, leave it to me. Ling Dan smiled confidently and stepped forward. He flipped his palm and a rather unusual weapon appeared in his hand. It was nearly a 2 meters long trident. The trident's 3 prongs were extremely sharp. It exuded a faint cold light as the sword light's glitters reflected on its surface. As Ling Dan's divine power exploded out, his trident stabbed ahead and beams of divine power shot out at the speed of lighting from all 3 trident tips, which happened to collide with the 3 sword lights from Pang Dao. Bang! 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 3 loud noises crackled almost at the same time. As divine powers came sweeping down, Ling Dan and Pang Tao's figures clashed into each other again. Swoosh! Swoosh! Clang! Clang! The sounds of wind breaking and collisions between weapons continuously reverberated. Both Pang Dao and Ling Dan were swiftly moving around. Those people around could only notice 2 ghostly figures colliding but were unable to discern their moves. Judging from appearances, those 2 seemed to be evenly matched. So powerful. Is this the strength of the 12 minor kings? The people around were awe-stricken. Both Pang Dao and Ling Dan were first-class divine demons, but being one of the 12 minor kings, their combat powers were far better than an ordinary first-class divine demons. Even Jian Wushuang was secretly nodding in approval. Although Pang Dao is not a righteous person, he is indeed powerful. His combat powers should have reached the level of peak divine demon realm. He might stand a chance to win if he fights against a true peak divine demon. As for Ling Dan, his strength is still a far cry from Pang Dao, mumbled Jian Wushuang to himself. It may seem that those 2 were evenly matched, but Jian Wushuang had sharp observational skills. He noticed that Ling Dan had tried his best, but Pang Dao was still going easy on him and had not even displayed his full force. True to his observations, a scornful smile appeared on Pang Tao's face after a while. Ling Dan, is this just what you are capable of? Ling Dan's face changed. You think about stopping me with this level of power? It's ridiculous. Pang Dao sneered. His figure that was already moving at high speeds instantly doubled upon being engulfed by the power of laws. Pang Dao was already moving at a terrifying speed before when fighting against Ling Dan, and it was already hard for everyone around to see his silhouette. In spite of that, he still doubled up his speed. What was going on? In terms of speed, Pang Dao had completely surpassed Ling Dan. Swoosh! Pang Tao's figure instantly burst out and was too fast for Ling Dan to react. A sword shadow quietly appeared beside Ling Dan. No good. Ling Dan's face drastically changed. He quickly withdrew his trident to resist, only to find that not only had Pang Dao sped up in his movements, but his sword moves were also much faster than before. It was too late for Ling Dan's trident to parry off the attack. Chuck! A beam of sword light pierced through Ling Dan's body. It went into his body with a huge impactful blow, which was transmitted to Ling Dan's divine body through his battle armor. Puff! Ling Dan directly spouted a big mouthful of blood and fell into an embarrassing state. Pang Dao smiled coldly at the sight. He wasted no time and turned towards Jian Wushuang. Swoosh! The terrifying speed erupted again, but it was aimed directly at Jian Wushuang this time. Ling Dan could not stop him as he had not even recovered from the last attack. Pang Dao was aiming to kill Jian Wushuang. Zhuo Bing was tremendously shocked by the scene, yet she immediately looked at Zhong Yi and Su Tong next to her. Let's join forces and stop him. Okay. Zhong Yi and Su Tong exchanged looks and both nodded solemnly. They came from Narcissus Island and were in the same sect as Jian Wushuang. It was only natural for them to protect Jian Wushuang from Pang Tao's attack. Zhuo Bing, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong attacked at the same time. All three of them were first-class divine demons and were powerful in combat. Together, they were confident that they could manage Pang Dao for a while. When Pang Dao saw the three of them taking action, he contemptuously smiled. Such confidence. Boom. Pang Dao increased his speed again by nearly 30%. One should not take the 30% lightly as it had completely caught Zhuo Bing, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong by surprise. Zoom. A fierce and swift sword light cut away all obstacles in front of him. Zhuo Bing, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong, the three first-class divine demons, were completely thrown aside. Though all three of them were already giving their best shot, they were still crushed ruthlessly by the sword light. Pang Dao maintained his speed and charged towards Jian Wushuang. Nothing was in his way this time. I was going to spare your life initially as long as you obediently hand over those 2 jade slips, but now, you can't blame me. Even if you're a genius, you would be no different from a useless piece of log after you die. 1. Pang Tao's eyes were chilly. 1. Genius, and a useless piece of log, both have the same pronunciation on the second word in Chinese, a kind of wordplay by the author. Hence, it's a common saying to call someone gifted genius, which is and refer to someone weak as. Chapter 24-27, Long Zishan Jian Wushuang had stood at the same spot, observing Pang Dao injuring Ling Dan before Zhuo Bing, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong continued with their collaborative attacks after Pang Dao had dispersed them. Despite all that, his face remained incredibly calm and still, but concealed deep in his eyes was a sharp shining beam of light. Whoosh! In a flash, Pang Dao had already appeared before Jian Wushuang. Die, kid! Pang Tao's viciousness was overwhelming and coupled with his terrifying speed, he was about to cut off Jian Wushang's head with the sword in his hand. Stop! A sudden yell exploded in the air. Every single person's heart trembled as that was a yell that did not allow disobedience. Even Pang Dao could not help but to stop his motion when hearing that explosive yell. He looked behind himself and saw a young man in purple armor. It's Long Zishan. 3rd ranked. One of the 12 minor kings from Great Compassion Sec. People around immediately recognized the man in purple armor. Senior brother Zishan? Pang Tao's face changed. If he was someone else, Pang Dao would have completely ignored him. However, Long Zishan was not only his senior brother but also someone he very much respected. What are you doing, Pang Dao? Long Zishan's expression was stern. Senior brother Zishan, the 8th trial bridge has been broken through by Jian Wushuang. He now possesses the relics that Purple Blood Saint had left behind. I only want to take back what's rightfully mine, replied Pang Dao. What a joke. The rules have always been such that the relics belong to one with good morals. Purple Blood Saint's legacy naturally goes to him since the trial has been broken through by this junior brother from Narcissus Island. What do you think you're doing? Are you trying to rob? Or are you trying to bully others? You've embarrassed all of us in the Great Compassion Sect. Long Zishan did not save Pang Tao's face at all as he scolded him in front of everyone. Senior brother Zishan. Pang Tao's face was filled with dissatisfaction. He also felt a little angry inside and was ready to express it. Step back immediately. Long Zishan quietly growled, but secretly gave Pang Dao a look. Pang Dao understood the signal and stepped back, even though he was not satisfied. Seeing that Pang Dao had listened to him, Long Zishan sighed in relief and immediately looked over at Jian Wushuang with his attitude becoming a lot warmer. You must be junior brother Wushuang from Narcissus Island? My hot-headed junior brother Pang Dao recklessly took action just now. Sorry for offending you, here's an interspatial ring with plenty of elixirs inside it. Please take it as a token of apology. We hope you and all the friends from Narcissus Island will forgive us. Long Zishan tossed over an interspatial ring that he had prepared towards Jian Wushuang as he was speaking. Jian Wushuang grabbed the ring but did not look inside it. He deeply looked at Long Zishan with a strange light in his eyes. All those disciples around started praising him in their minds. Among the 4 minor kings in the Great Compassion sect, Long Zishan was considered the most mild-mannered and enjoyed the highest acclaim. His appearance today proved the saying to be true. Long Zishan was a very reasonable person judging from his apologetic actions. He was also a very good representative of the Great Compassion sect, causing everyone to feel a sense of respect towards them. However, Pang Tao's expression was extremely uneasy. He did not say anything but had already sent a message through his token and asked Long Zishan. Senior brother Zishan, what's happening here? Pang Dao was slightly puzzled. Long Zishan secretly replied to him, Junior brother, you have gone a little overboard today. It's true that the Great Compassion sect is the largest sect in Wuxia Wilderness, the most powerful existence. We can usually do whatever we want in Wuxia Wilderness, and others would have let us have our way even though we're being a little reckless. They would even swallow their pride to not offend us, but that's also on the basis that we could find certain excuses or reasoning on our side. As for today, if you found even just a little bit of reasoning or excuses, you could have done whatever you wanted. Even if you killed Jian Wushuang, so be it. You could have even killed Zhong Yi of Narcissus Island and Ling Dan of Ancient Star Temple without fear, and the Great Compassion sect would back you up after you've done it. The problem here is that you're obviously being unreasonable. The 8th Trial Bridges challenge was broken through by Jian Wushuang with his very own abilities, and now you're asking for what he has earned. That's simply robbery. In addition, you're being so reckless in front of everyone. At this moment, a few elders from Narcissus Island outside have already reached senior brother Tu Chen Cheng and a few of our elders, questioning the thieving behavior of Great Compassion sect's disciples. Our elders from the Great Compassion sect understood that we're in the wrong and could not give a convincing answer, hence the reason they sent me here to stop you. Is that so? Pang Dao finally understood. He knew that senior brother Zishan was usually more conniving and often acted as unreasonable as they were, sometimes even more reckless. Senior brother Zishan had always let him be, but he was there to represent the sect and scolded him in front of so many people. Listen, junior brother Pang Dao, as long as we have reasons or excuses, you can do whatever you want. That's the Great Compassion sect's way of being. However, if what you do doesn't come with a reason and was simply because you want to destroy someone, that's fine as well. However, you will have to do it in the dark and not out in public. You can't be so careless, especially right before all these sects. Do you understand? Long Zishan advised. Understood, senior brother Zishan, but that Jian Wushuang, Pang Dao still did not feel satisfied. You fool, you definitely can't kill him in front of so many people, but you can always wait a little while. When the 6 positions appear, all disciples from every sect would definitely try to frantically fight for it. It would be a bloodbath at that time and you wouldn't have to worry anymore. Wouldn't it be easier to kill Jian Wushuang then? Long Zishan giggled. Pang Dao felt a little excited inside. Yes. Now I understand. When we're in the midst of a battle, I'll stand by Jian Wushuang and wait for my chance. If Jian Wushuang was also going to fight for a position, I'll kill him with the most thorough methods. Even if he doesn't partake in the competition, I could still find ways to push him into the battlefield which would be merciless at that point. Narcissus Island probably wouldn't dare to say much if I accidentally killed him then. At most, I would apologize to them afterward. Apologize? Since it's on the battlefield, getting killed in chaos would only be due to his own inadequacy. Why the need to apologize? Long Zishan sneered frostily. Pang Tao's anger was completely under control after hearing what Long Zishan had said. He raised his head again and looked at Jian Wushuang with his icy-cold eyes. Chapter 24-28. News spreading. Senior brother Zishan is right. I have lots of opportunities to kill him. I'll let the kid live for a few more days since that's the case, Pang Dao told himself. However, what he did not know was that Zhen Wushuang looked at him with a touch of ridicule. In Pang Tao's mind, Zhen Wushuang had managed to live because of Long Zishan's arrival. On the contrary, the person Long Zishan had rescued was actually in fact Pang Dao himself. During that split second, Zhen Wushuang had the intention to kill Pang Dao. If Long Zishan had not arrived in time, Pang Dao would have turned into a corpse. However, neither Pang Dao, Long Zishan, nor anyone around knew that. At the surface, Long Zishan was still scolding Pang Dao. Junior brother, you're really too reckless this time. Prepare for your punishment when you go back. Understood. Pang Dao nodded without any feeling of dissatisfaction. Come with me, said Long Zishan, who led Pang Dao and the rest of his group to leave this place. All the disciples from Narcissus Island gave a huge sigh of relief after watching Long Zishan, Pang Dao, and the rest left this place. They are finally gone. Zhong Yi and Su Tong both felt a burden unloaded. Pang Dao alone had already given them an immense amount of pressure. They could not imagine how terrorizing it would be if Long Zishan joined in the mix. Little brother, are you all right? Zhuo Bing went up to Zhen Wushuang. I'm fine, but I feel bad getting senior brother Ling Dan involved. Zhen Wushuang looked at Ling Dan. Ling Dan was the first one who tried stopping Pang Dao but got injured instead. His face was still pale. I'll live, it's more important that junior brother Wushuang is all right. Ling Dan smiled after noticing Zhen Wushuang was looking at him. Zhen Wushuang was Zhuo Bing's younger brother, therefore he wanted to do his best to protect Zhen Wushuang in front of Zhuo Bing. Unfortunately, his ability was not up to par. Luckily, not all disciples from the Great Compassion sect are bullies. At least this Long Zishan is reasonable and knows his place, said Zhuo Bing. Reasonable? Know his place. He's just smarter, that's all. Zhen Wushuang could not help but laughed. It was true. Even though they were both core disciples of the Great Compassion sect, and one of the 12 minor kings, Long Zishan was a lot smarter than Pang Dao. At the very least, in terms of his behavior and mannerisms, Long Zishan had a good reputation on the surface. However, who knew what kind of person was he in the dark? Junior brother Wushuang. All the disciples from Narcissus Island walked up to him. Zhong Yi and Su Tong both looked at Zhen Wushuang with mixed emotions. Junior brother Wushuang, was what Pang Dao just said true? The rest of the disciples also looked at Zhen Wushuang, waiting for an answer. Although they believed a big part of it, they still felt it was hard to believe, hence they needed to hear it from Zhen Wushuang himself. Looking at everyone's answer-seeking eyes, Zhen Wushuang laughed. That was a very long time ago, it's no big deal. Zhen Wushuang sounded extremely calm, but the fact he had admitted it remained. At that point, all of them, Zhong Yi, Su Tong, and all the Narcissus Island disciples on site gasped, feeling even more stunned. They finally understood why Elder Wu Jian would defend Zhen Wushuang with all his might and send him into Saint's tomb. It turned out that it was not due to any special relationship between them, but because Elder Wu Jian knew of Zhen Wushuang's background as a rarely seen superior demon. A superior demon such as him should deserve to get the highest level of nurturing. Zhong Yi took a deep breath and continued asking, Junior brother Wushuang, there's something that I don't quite understand. When Bai Yu and Elder Wu Jian invited you at the same time, why did you reject the Great Compassion sect to become the personal disciple of Fan Zhenxian instead? You chose to become a regular outer disciple on Narcissus Island. The rest of them also had the same question. People tend to move up to higher places. Anybody would wish to join sects that were stronger to get more resources and have more improvement space. Perhaps it was understandable that Zhen Wushuang refused to join the Great Compassion sect out of dislike for them. However, what was incomprehensible was that he happily became an outer disciple when he could have easily become a Narcissus Island core disciple or even the Lord's personal disciple. Zhen Wushuang laughed and said, the reason is simple. I just didn't want too many constraints. That's it. Everyone was surprised. That is it. Zhen Wushuang nodded again. The core disciples from Narcissus Island speechlessly looked at each other and shrugged in the end. All of them could only assume that a superior demon like Zhen Wushuang's thought process was different from theirs. Little brother, at this moment, the genius disciples in the entire Saint's tomb have already known about you inheriting the relics left behind by Purple Blood Saint. There are bound to be people with inconceivable ideas. You need to be careful from now on, especially that Pang Dao. I've got a feeling he won't just stop here, said Shuabing solemnly. Yes, I understand. I'll be careful, said Zhen Wushuang. The field very soon became quiet. The many various sects' disciples who came to watch had also left. The news spread like wildfire as well upon their departure. It did not take long before every sect's genius disciples in Saint's tomb knew that Zhen Wushuang had the items left behind by Purple Blood Saint. At the same time, the story of Zhen Wushuang's terrifying talents had also spread to every corner of Saint's tomb. All of a sudden, there was a huge quake among the people in Saint's tomb. It could not be helped because Zhen Wushuang's battle records were too incredible. There was nobody who was unmoved by that story when they heard it. His name began to spread among the sects for the very first time as Zhen Wushuang, an ultimate demon who lived among people. In a hidden room within Saint's tomb, Crimson Stone Saint's remnant consciousness had always been there, and that consciousness was extended into every corner of the tomb. Anything that happened within could not escape his knowledge. Naturally, he had noticed when Pang Dao and his gang were picking a fight with Zhen Wushuang. The person he was interested in was not Pang Dao but Zhen Wushuang instead. Anyways, he had always been interested in Zhen Wushuang. Crimson Stone Saint had also heard everything Pang Dao said, the various information about Zhen Wushuang. Profound achievement in sword principles at 16 years old. Killed third-class divine demon with the level of chaotic realm, and overpowered 2 second-class divine demon head-to-head at 19 years old. Achieved completion in sword principles as a peak stage chaotic realm, passed the 8th Trial Bridges challenges and obtained the relics left behind by Purple Blood Saint this year at 21 years old. Haha, this little boy called Zhen Wushuang really is not just talented, huh? Chapter 24-29. Joining hands. Even Crimson Stone Saint exclaimed after knowing about Zhen Wushuang's story. He was a well-respected undying saint and had witnessed various genius experts amidst traveling throughout the ancient god domain when he was still a mortal. Among them, there were some truly mesmerizing demons and monsters. Even so, he had never heard of a 16-year-old demon achieving profound achievement regardless of how impressive that 16-year-old was. As for an early-stage chaotic realm that could go head-on and overpower a second-class divine demon, that was even more unbelievable. If not hearing it directly from Gold Cauldron Sect's Na Chen Yuan, even Crimson Stone Saint himself would have trouble believing it, not to mention genius disciples from various sects. Even Crimson Stone Saint himself had never seen or even heard of such a monster. Crimson Stone Saint became even more curious about Zhen Wushuang after discovering it. If he could overpower second-class divine demon while still being an early-stage chaotic realm, his ability must have gone up a whole lot, now that Hez at the peak stage chaotic realm and also had achieved a breakthrough in his sword principle cultivation level. I suppose his battle strength is perhaps comparable to a peak divine demon? I wonder where he is positioned in comparison to those few geniuses in the tomb. In a few more days, I want to observe in detail when the competition for those 6 positions begins. After that, it was extremely peaceful in the saint's tomb. Genius disciples from all sects tried breaking through those challenges on the Bridge of Trials with nobody else creating any more troubles. As for Zhen Wushuang, although everyone knew that he possessed Purple Blood Saint's relics and some felt slight greed to possess them, all of them held back with nobody daring to take any actions. Almost in the blink of an eye, Saint's tomb had been opened for almost a month. In the fields where Narcissus Island disciples gathered, the disciples from Ancient Star Temple had chosen to station there as well. Zhuo Bing, Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong gathered together. It's almost time. If nothing's out of expectations, the competition for those 6 positions will begin these few days, said Ling Dan Fengtian Scroll. For all of us, it's such a precious opportunity to be able to study Fengtian Scroll. Hence, when those 6 positions appear, there's bound to be a blooded fight over it, mumbled Shuabing. Zhong Yi and Su Tong, I gather you're both interested in those positions as well? Ling Dan looked at them. That's for sure, Zhong Yi and Su Tong simultaneously nodded. Why don't we join hands since that's the case? Ling Dan suggested. Joining hands? Zhong Yi and Su Tong both felt surprised. It's such that if there is a position token that appears near our area when the competition begins, all four of us could use our full might to fight for it. However, if any among us successfully obtains a position token, the other three should not fight for it, and have to do their best to help him fend off genius disciples from other sects instead, said Ling Dan. Hearing that, Zhong Yi and Su Tong looked at each other and nodded without much hesitation. Sure. It would be exceptionally difficult to get one position token relying only on junior sister Su Tong and myself. However, if we join forces with brother Ling Dan and Miss Shuabing, we might be able to get one if luck permits, said Zhong Yi. Well then, it's decided. From my investigation today, even though there are many sects surrounding us in this area, there aren't many who are very skilled. Furthermore, I'm the only 12-minor king. If we four join hands and a position token really appears around here, there shouldn't be anyone qualified to fight against us over it. Ling Dan smiled. However, as soon as he spoke, there were a few black dots dashing towards them from the void not far away. They soon had appeared within their sight. These are people from the Great Compassion sect, with Pang Dao leading. What is he doing here? Zhuo Bing, Ling Dan, and the other Narcissus Island disciples were stunned. However, Pang Dao did not come up to provoke them this time. They instead stopped somewhere rather close to them. Afterward, the 10 Great Compassion sect disciples led by Pang Dao found a place and settled down. Damn it, this Pang Dao also plans to wait in this area? Ling Dan said quietly. Saint's tomb was very large, and even though the inner area was not as big as the outer area, it was still not a small place per se. Those 6 position tokens that symbolized the right to study Fengtian scroll could appear at any time on any corner of the inner area. They could appear anywhere, so it was largely luck dependent on whether one could find them. All the various sects' genius disciples were scattered in different places within the inner area, waiting patiently for their opportunities. However, no sects wished for any opponents who could form a threat to lurk around the area they were in. It would only mean that a strenuous fight would occur with such an opponent around, should a position token appear in that area. Pang Dao from the Great Compassion sect was undoubtedly a strong opponent in the eyes of disciples from Narcissus Island and Ancient Star Temple. Previously, Ling Dan thought that if Ancient Star Temple and Narcissus Island joined hands, they could dominate that area, and no other sects could withstand them. However, now that Pang Dao had appeared, the situation was completely different. This Pang Dao has most probably here for us, said Zhong Yi coldly. Correct. When he was taken away by Long Zishan, I could see how dissatisfied he was and would look for a chance to make a move on junior brother Wu Shuang, and now he simply settles close to us. As soon as the competition begins, he would have the chance to do something to junior brother Wu Shuang. Su Tong agreed. Little brother. Zhuo Bing's expression turned cold and called out. Jian Wu Shuang, who was sitting on a broken rock studying Purple Bloodsword Principle, gradually opened his eyes and walked over. Big sister, what is the matter? Jian Wushuang smiled. Look over there. Zhuo Bing signaled Jian Wushuang with her eyes. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at the direction she was gazing at, noticing Pang Dao and the others from the Great Compassion sect. Oh, they're camping close by. Looks like he's looking for a chance to get me. Jian Wushuang smiled. It's good that you know. He wouldn't make a move since the competition for those token positions hasn't begun. However, the inner area will be incredibly chaotic once it starts. If such a token appears in our area, all of us including Pang Dao will fight for it. You need to retreat to the battlefield's edge and not join in or stay too close to avoid getting dragged into it so that Pang Dao couldn't find a chance. Understand? Zhuo Bing advised. Gotcha, I'll be careful. My life is extremely precious after all. Jian Wushuang smiled mildly, with not the least bit of worry in his mind. Chapter 2430. The frenzy began. Crimson Stone Saint flipped his hand in the hidden space, and a white-colored token suddenly appeared. He mysteriously smiled while looking at the white token. It's about time, let's begin. The first position token. Kid, well, see how you fare. Crimson Stone Saint swung his hand as he exclaimed, turning the white token into a flash before it vanished. Gong. The giant structure of the saint's tomb shook. The tremors were very violent, as if the grounds were shattering and mountains moving. The sudden changes startled those genius disciples in the inner area. Is it starting? Many disciples' eyes were burning with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, in the area where Jian Wushuang was located, Narcissus Island, Ancient Star Temple, Great Compassion Sect led by Pang Dao, and disciples from many other sects were gathered there and waited calmly. Jian Wushuang immediately stood up with everyone when the saint's tomb started trembling. It's coming. I wonder where the first position token will appear. Zhuo Bing, Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong felt fanatically excited. All of them were truly looking forward to it. Right then, a roaring rumble tore through the air. The ground suddenly broke open in the area where Jian Wushuang and his companions were, shooting up a blinding white light beam from below. In the blink of an eye, the white light moved into the middle of the void and appeared in front of all those disciples. The genius disciples on the scene were all stunned. That's a position token? The first position token. A number of them could not recover from the amazement. One should know that the inner area was extremely large, and the place those 6 position tokens would appear was random. Those genius disciples from various sects could only rely on their own luck. Obviously, none of those disciples expected such good fortune to have the first position token appearing in their local area. It was a short surprise which became chaotic the next moment. Do it. Grab it, quick. The token is mine. Shouts suddenly filled the air. The total number of genius disciples was around 100, and in that instant, other than a small number of second-class divine demons, most disciples dashed towards the floating white token in the void. For example, Pang Dao from the Great Compassion Sect did not miss a beat, taking the lead with 2 first-class and 7 second-class divine demons from his sect following right behind him. Pang Tao's face was stern as he had set his mind in seizing the white token. Little brother, stay far away and don't get involved in the battle. After Zhuo Bing advised Jian Wushuang, she turned to her companions. Everyone, let's do this. Right. Move. Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, Su Tong along with the more capable second-class divine demon disciples from Narcissus Island and Ancient Star Temple sprung into action. Lines of figures charged rapidly towards the white token. As for Jian Wushuang, he did not take action at this first moment. He stood there at the same place and observed calmly instead. The fight had begun. Haha, it's mine. The first token is mine. A young man in an elegant sky-blue long robe laughed maniacally. He was a second-class divine demon that was physically the closest to the white token, hence he was the first to arrive and naturally held the white token in his hand. However, as soon as he caught the token and was about to keep it in his interspatial ring, "Watch out!" somebody suddenly shouted. The warning came from a first-class divine demon who was also from the same sect as the young man. The young man's face changed, but he could not react in time as a strange scarlet light beam went through his body and instantly ended his life. A petite young lady in red with a frosty expression was right next to the young man, and the strange scarlet light was actually her cold-looking spear which was currently floating in front of her. She immediately reached out to grab the white token upon killing the young man. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 fatal attacks were directed right at her. 2 of those attacks were sent by 2 second-class divine demons. However, the third stroke was released by a first-class divine demon. Damn! The young lady in red clenched her teeth, forcibly halted her steps and dashed sideways at the same time to avoid those attacks. A ghastly dark figure appeared next to the young man's body and extended his large hand to take the young man's interspatial ring and white token. Gong! A giant mountain appeared out of nowhere above the darkly clad figure, and more than 10 attacks were sent out from around him at the same time. No. The darkly clad figure got stunned. Although he was quite a capable first-class divine demon, it was just too difficult facing so many attacks from every direction. Boom! 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 Noises of impacts were heard. The darkly clad figure gave his all but still could not ward off all the attacks. Finally, His body suddenly collapsed after getting hit by a few attacks. Thus ended the life of a first-class divine demon. Just in such a short time, 2 divine demons, a second-class and a first-class, respectively died under a crowd of attacks. However, that was only the beginning. Following that, kill. I'll kill whoever seizes the token. The position token is mine. Anybody who dares to take it will receive no mercy. Manically shouts filled the edge of the skies. The competition started as soon as the position token appeared, and so were the killings. This is pretty crazy. Jian Wushuang stood idly at the edge of the battlefield and observed everything that was happening. Those sect geniuses could still coexist peacefully, not only in the outer area but also in the inner area when trying out the challenges on the Bridge of Trials. However, they started their bloody fights as soon as the position token appeared. This only showed the importance of the position token and the strong desires of all disciples from every sect over the Fengtian scroll. However, due to the extremely crazy competition, more than 10 disciples fell shortly after the battle started, and one of them was even a first-class divine demon. After all, first-class divine demons usually had a safety token and would break it as soon as they encountered a crisis. Up to that point, nobody had the chance to store the white token into their interspatial ring. As soon as someone got close to the white token, people around would issue coordinated attacks and kill them on the spot. Hence, the white token was still floating midair and illuminating its white light, stirring greed in all of the disciples there. In such a frenzied competition, even first-class divine demons who were extremely capable did not dare to be reckless. Chapter 2431. The seas. There were as many as 100 genius disciples from various sects surrounding the white token in that area, but no one dared to take it. Even Pang Dao, who was considered the strongest among all. Pang Dao gathered with a few disciples from the Great Compassion sect. "Senior brother Pang Dao, aren't we taking it?" asked a first-class divine demon disciple. "If we do it now, we'll immediately become everyone's target. Be patient and give it some time." Pang Dao waved his hand. Meanwhile, Zhuo Bing, Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong also stood together. "What now?" Su Tong frowned hard. "We're obviously at a deadlock right now. No one has the guts to step up because doing so means he'll be attacked by everyone. Even Pang Dao doesn't dare to make a move." Zhong Yi gazed at Pang Dao once and said coldly, "This can't go on forever, somebody has to break the deadlock." Ling Dan's expression turned gloomy and looked at Zhuo Bing next to him. Junior sister, Zhuo Bing could understand Ling Dan's mind through that look. She nodded slightly but still reminded him, "Be careful. Don't worry, worst comes to worst, I'll just use the safety token." Ling Dan plainly smiled and suddenly dashed out. Whoosh! Ling Dan rushed towards the white token at breakneck speeds. In that situation, everyone was keenly watching the white token and being very cautious of each other. As soon as Ling Dan took action, he attracted everyone's attention. "Kill him. Die." A large number of the surrounding disciples, including tens of second-class divine demon and a few first-class divine demons, came rushing towards Ling Dan. At that juncture, no one cared who he was or what was his background. So what, if he was one of the 12 minor kings? He would receive no mercy since he dared to touch the position token. Ling Dan's expression turned gloomy upon noticing the wave of attacks rolling towards him, but he did not stop. Just when all the attacks were about to fall on him, there was a loud ring and a thick layer of golden light rose from his body. The golden light suddenly formed into a golden turtle, wrapping Ling Dan completely within it. All the attacks fell on the golden turtle and made continuous clashing noises. After a wave of clashing noises, the golden turtle broke apart and Ling Dan's body suffered some injuries with blood streaming down a corner of his mouth. Even so, he had withstood the strong waves of attacks. Zhuo Bing had also taken actions when everyone frenziedly attacked Ling Dan. She was incredibly fast and arrived next to the white token in the blink of an eye. She swiftly waved her hand, and the white token that had been floating in the void had finally been kept in her interspatial ring. That sight simply made all the genius disciples roll their eyes wide with jealousy. "No. Let go of the token. Drop dead." Ling Dan appeared next to Zhuo Bing in the first moment. The golden turtle rose from his body once again, but it was a lot dimmer this time. Zhuo Bing had a solemn look on her face, and her body was also glowing with a layer of golden light. They joined hands to fend off those disciples' attacks while propelling themselves towards the direction of Narcissus Island disciples. "Friends, please give us a hand," said Ling Dan with a low tone. "No problem." Zhong Yi and Su Tong did not hesitate. Before the fight started, they had agreed to join hands. After joining hands, regardless of who seized the token, the other three would do their best to give a helping hand to that person. Zhong Yi and Su Tong would naturally do everything they could to help since Zhuo Bing and Ling Dan had obtained the white token. Zhong Yi and Su Tong immediately made their moves. That triggered the anger of everyone surrounding them. "Ill be damned, Narcissus Island is joining hands with Ancient Star Temple." Narcissus Island and Ancient Star Temple each have 2 first-class divine demon. That's a total of 4, and among them is Ling Dan, a 12 minor king expert. HMPH. So what? They dared to take the token, so they deserve to die all the same. Kill, kill. Don't let them get away. The rest of the genius disciples from various sects agreed and surrounded the 4 of them. Zhuo Bing and company made up a coalition of 4 first-class divine demon, with the second-class divine demon disciples from Narcissus Island and Ancient Star Temple were also trying their best to assist from the sideline. In such a situation, they could more or less withstand the attacks from the rest. Their next step was to break out from the crowd. As long as they broke out of it, the various sects' genius disciples would find it difficult to do anything to them. "Careful. Quickly, this way." When the 4 first-class divine demons joined hands and continuously withstood the crowd's attacks, Zhuo Bing also tried getting close to the edge of the crowd. Here's a chance. Zhuo Bing felt a little excited. From the look of this situation, the 4 divine demons coalition could very possibly break out of the crowd. However, all of a sudden, "Junior sister, watch out," shouted someone. Zhuo Bing immediately looked ahead and saw a piercing light sweeping towards her. That was a sword light, an extremely blinding sword light. Tracing back the source of the sword light was Pang Dao, who was projecting a strong energy tide. Together with him were another 2 great compassion sects first-class divine demons. Zhuo Bing's face changed, and the long red staff in her hand suddenly turned into a long snake, furiously charging outwards. However, when the red staff and blinding sword light collided, that staff which supposedly carried a heaven-shattering fury had been deflected, and Zhuo Bing had to take several steps backward. The few retreating steps caused her to fall back into the crowd. "Kill! Kill!" Everyone around her took the opportunity and charged towards her. Damn it! Zhuo Bing could not hide her frustration. Pang Dao finally can't stay still anymore. Ling Dan's eyes were incredibly gloomy. Supposedly, with 4 first-class divine demons joining hands meant that they could take over the area and had a very big chance of seizing the token, but with Pang Dao's appearance, the abilities that Pang Dao displayed could completely crush all 4 of them. "Ice Queen, give me the token or you will die." Pang Dao stared at Zhuo Bing coldly. "TMPH, are you trying to scare me? Do you think I would be shaken?" Zhuo Bing humphed frostily. She had a safety token with her. If she really came across a crisis, she could always escape directly with the safety token. "Want to kill her?" Pang Dao did not have the skills to do so. "You're looking for death." Pang Dao was furious and immediately dashed out. Terrifying energy and power suddenly pressed against Zhuo Bing. Although she was an extremely capable first-class divine demon, when facing Pang Dao, who was one of the 12 minor kings, her mind still felt immense pressure. Chapter 2432, Purple Light Phantom Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The blinding sword light flashed again. Obviously, Pang Dao had no mercy towards a lady as he completely exerted his sword skills. His speed had reached its very limit, along with his non-stop attack strokes raining down on Zhuo Bing. Facing such sword skills, Zhuo Bing could only give her all to ward off those attacks, but it was incredibly difficult. "Junior sister, I'll block him." Ling Dan rushed over and immediately blocked Pang Dao. "Are you sure you can?" Pang Dao chuckled. Suddenly the power and speed of his hands surged even more. Zhuo Bing and her coalition were already under immense pressure with only Pang Dao himself, not forgetting to mention that Pang Dao was not the only person she had to worry about. There were other disciples around who also wanted to take her down. Zhuo Bing and the rest could not hold on much longer under their collective assaults. "No, we can't hold on much longer," growled Su Tong quietly from the side. "Damn. Do I really have to forego the token that I have already acquired?" Zhuo Bing's face turned frosty. The position token right then was kept inside her interspatial ring. She would surely not want to give up something that she had already obtained. However, the four of them had already fallen inside a deadly circle which was almost impossible to break out. In such a situation, if she did not release the token, she would perhaps have to break the safety token and leave Saint's tomb. Even if they escaped, they would still have to leave the position token behind. "We have no choice. Junior sister, give it up for now. Let's wait for another chance to take it back." Ling Dan sent a message to Zhuo Bing. He was the one who had to endure the biggest pressure among the four of them, as he had already taken some injuries when he tried helping Zhuo Bing to obtain the token. After that, he not only had to face Pang Dao, but another first-class divine demon from the Great Compassion sect was also targeting him. He was being completely overpowered and was just barely hanging on. If this continues for another short moment, he would have no choice but to break the safety token. Seeing that was the case while still feeling extremely unwilling, Zhuo Bing gritted her teeth and made up her mind. As long the verdant hills remained, there would be no shortages of firewood. Zhuo Bing had made up her mind to let go of the position token. However, just as Zhuo Bing and her coalition were being pushed to the edge, no one realized that Jian Wushuang had already disappeared from where he stood outside the battlefield. Jian Wushuang was already in the middle of the crowd at the battlefield center when he reappeared, standing right behind Zhuo Bing. "Big sister, need help?" Without any fair warning, Jian Wushuang's voice sounded next to Zhuo Bing's ear. Zhuo Bing shuddered and looked at Jian Wushuang. "Little brother, what are you doing here?" Zhuo Bing was shocked. She had advised him many times not to get involved in the fight for the positions, not to even get too close to the battlefield in order to avoid giving Pang Dao any opportunity to attack him. Jian Wushuang promised her during that time as well. If that was the case, why did Jian Wushuang directly appear on the battlefield? "Go. Leave now," Zhuo Bing yelled. However, Jian Wushuang did not move. On the side, Pang Dao had also noticed Jian Wushuang's arrival. "Haha. This kid came into the battlefield like an idiot, trying to help his big sis." Pang Dao could not hide his excitement. "Right on. I was still wondering when I could kill him, and now he presented himself as a gift. Just as the saying goes, you choose not the paved path to heaven, but break into a gateless hell 1L. Pang Tao's eyes were also shining with a thick light of greed. He immediately made up his mind after seeing Jian Wushuang. "You too, keep Ling Dan busy," instructed Pang Dao. The other two first-class divine demons from Great Compassion sect immediately went up and kept Ling Dan in a tight web of attacks. With his hands being free, Pang Dao went straight to Jian Wushuang. "Pang Dao, stop. I'll give you the position token," Zhuo Bing shouted. Pang Dao sneered. "Position token? The position token would need time to fight over it, but Jian Wushuang is standing right in front of me." Pang Dao had no hesitation in his mind. He had already calculated that there would still be enough time to fight for the position token after killing Jian Wushuang and obtaining Purple Blood Saint's relics. "Little brother, run, run now," Zhuo Bing shouted in a frenzy after seeing Pang Dao charging at Jian Wushuang with full ferocity. However, Jian Wushuang did not have any intention to escape. He looked straight at Pang Dao. The Blood Mountain sword had appeared with a flip of his palm. Jian Wushuang then immediately shifted his figure and took the initiative to charge at Pang Dao. "You wanna die?" Not only did Pang Dao not feel any anger, but he also laughed in return, which his facial expression becoming vicious. "Boy, you're the one who's seeking death, don't blame me. Die." With a ring, a blinding swordlight lit up. It was like a little sun, shining across the lands. Many people around shut their eyes because of the sword's brightness. That stroke had contained Pang Tao's killing intent and hatred, which were absolutely terrifying. Most importantly, his speed was incredibly fast. It was so fast that nobody around could offer assistance. "Little brother," Zhuo Bing opened her eyes wide, feeling desperate. However, Jian Wushuang, who was floating calmly, had also moved the Blood Mountain sword in his hand. Swing tilde, a poignantly beautiful swordlight flashed. The swordlight contained a mild purple that looked incomparably gorgeous as it sliced through the void. The purple swordlight was not blinding, but incredibly demonic, as if the shadows of a purple-colored phantom flying by. The energy from it was calm and leisurely, not as devastating as Pang Tao's stroke. However, it was such a stroke that made Pang Tao's pupils slightly shrink when the beautiful purple light flashed by. This stroke doesn't seem usual. Right when Pang Dao noticed something. Jian Wushuang and Pang Dao had passed by each other. Jian Wushuang stood behind Pang Dao with his sword in one hand. Sword like shadows. Sword like spirits. Drive the sword with shadows. Drive the sword with spirits. So very beautiful, like the shadows and spirit. In the purple blood sword principle that Purple Blood Saint created, the third form, Purple Light Phantom, is actually the most beautiful stroke. Jian Wushuang wore a mild smile on his face and mumbled to himself as blood was dripping on the tip of his Blood Mountain sword. As if time and space were frozen. The many genius disciples, including Zhuo Bing, Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong, had all stopped their motions and looked at his direction. Shocked filled their eyes. Many people did not see clearly what actually had happened, they could only see that Pang Dao stood like a statue in one place, frozen. His eyes were hollow but filled with absolute horror and with even more disbelief. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but those two words were all he could let out. Phew. A gust of wind blew by and a sizable head went flying. Chapter 2433, Fearful Silence. The huge battlefield fell into a deathly silence. The various sects' genius disciples on the battlefield instinctively stopped dead in their tracks, with all their eyes fixed on the head that flew out with astonishment. They were stunned exactly because all of them knew full well who the owner of that head belonged. The fight had been going on with many sacrificed, and it made no difference if another person died. However, it was still shocking that Pang Dao, who ranked 6th among the 12 minor kings, was dead. Dead. Pang Dao is dead. How is this possible? Everyone was in disbelief. The scene sent everyone into a state of stupor. Countless sets of eyes turned towards the young man who walked towards Pang Tao's body. The young man who held a sword in one hand was only exuding the divine powers of a peak chaotic realm. Nevertheless, everyone witnessed that Pang Dao was beheaded by this man in peak chaotic realm. Jian Wushuang soon arrived next to Pang Tao's headless body. He swept his eyes over the body and noticed a token which was held tightly in his palm. That token was Pang Tao's safety token. A moment ago, Pang Dao sensed danger while exchanging blows with Jian Wushuang. He reacted by taking out his safety token and was about to crush it. Unfortunately, his actions were too slow. He was just a small step away from saving himself by crushing the safety token in his hand. However, he died. Under Jian Wushuang's sword, he did not even have the chance to crush his life-saving safety token before dying. Even having a safety token can't save his life. Jian Wushuang smirked and took away Pang Tao's safety token and interspatial ring. He then waved his hand, and Pang Tao's body fell downward. The people around had yet to recover from their daze. Especially Zhuo Bing and Zhong Yi, who was even more shocked than ever. The disciples of the Great Compassion sect were the ones who reacted first. Jian Wushuang, you killed senior brother Pang Dao. Just wait. We from the Great Compassion sect will never let you go. A first-class divine demon from Great Compassion sect shrieked. Jian Wushuang raised his brows and gave the first-class divine demon a side-eye and scoffed. Life and death are normal in battles for opportunities. Are you suggesting that only the Great Compassion sect is allowed to wantonly kill someone from other sects, but disciples from other sects aren't allowed to retaliate? If you are so free to be up there talking nonsense, you might as well avenge Pang Dao now. Of course, it depends if you can do so. The first-class divine demon was stunned by Jian Wushuang's rebuttal and was at a loss for words. He indeed had no guts to fight against Jian Wushuang. He was not alone. The genius disciples from various sects around him were terrified of Jian Wushuang. It was no joke since even Pang Dao died in Jian Wushuang's hands. Pang Dao was killed almost instantly without a chance to crush his safety token and escape. What kind of power was that? Noticing the people's expressions around him, Jian Wushuang faintly smiled and went over to Zhuobing. Big sister, you haven't given away the position token, right? No, I haven't, replied Zhuobing. That's good. It's yours since you got it. I'll kill whoever that dares to snatch it. Jian Wushuang was obviously saying that to the genius disciples around him. Those genius disciples were greedy for the position token in Zhuobing's hand. After hearing Jian Wushuang's warning, all of them were hesitating if it was worth snatching. They were fearful of Jian Wushuang. Why is Jian Wushuang so strong? I heard that he was able to duel second-class divine demons at the early stages of the chaotic realm. Now that he has reached peak chaotic realm, he's definitely stronger than before. How come he is so strong? Even Pang Dao was killed with a single wave of his sword with no chance to crush his safety token. How terrifying is that? I also think that Pang Tao's combat powers are a bit too much for a peak chaotic realm to handle. Maybe Jian Wushuang was just lucky? Could it be that Pang Dao was careless? Yes, it's possible. Those genius disciples were whispering. Jian Wushuang's beheading of Pang Dao shook the world. The sword movement was so fast that only a handful of people could see it. It was inevitable that many thought it was by mere luck that he killed Pang Dao. Motivated by the opportunities that came along with a position token, none of those disciples wanted to give it up so easily. After a round of discussion, many people looked at Jian Wushuang with their cold and menacing eyes. They had to attempt. A dark light beam appeared behind Jian Wushuang without warning. The dark light beam did not only strangely appear out of nowhere but was also extremely fast with overwhelming power. That sneak attack was made by a reputable first-class divine demon. He was overjoyed seeing that the dark light beam reached less than 10 meters behind Jian Wushuang. It's done. That first-class divine demon let out a low laugh as the dark light beam penetrated Jian Wushuang's figure. However, there were no traces of blood after it went through the figure, and in the next moment, Jian Wushuang's figure slowly dissipated. No good. The first-class divine demon's expression who did that sneak attack on Jian Wushuang turned ugly. He immediately took out his safety token and got ready to crush it. Whiz. A purple light flashed and disappeared quickly. No one knew when it appeared or where it came from. Immediately after the purple light disappeared, another head flew out. That first-class divine demon was also too late in crushing his safety token. Such a case was normal as having the safety token would only allow one to have a life-saving chance in the tomb, but it did not guarantee that one would not die. In the end, a few moments were needed to take out a safety token and crushed it. Oftentimes, crisis suddenly came so fast that one could not react in time and crush their safety token before being killed. In such cases, the safety token was left unused. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang's sword was fast approaching. The first-class divine demon that followed Pang Dao was also killed by Jian Wushuang and both did not crush their safety token in time. A first-class divine demon was killed again with just a single movement of his sword. It dampened the spirit of those genius disciples around to snatch the position token. All of them appeared to be frightened by Jian Wushuang. If they thought Jian Wushuang was just lucky when he previously killed Pang Dao, everyone could now realize that it was not a mere coincidence with another first-class divine demon killed. Jian Wushuang had horrifying powers. Chapter 2434. 3 tokens too powerful. He is too powerful. Even a first-class divine demon was instantly killed. Wouldn't I be seeking death if I go up now? Many genius disciples around were afraid. They were afraid of Jian Wushuang's power. If one had such strong powers, no one would dare to challenge him even if he had treasures that many wanted. Jian Wushuang was just that kind of a person. No one dared to snatch the position token in Zhuobing's hands with Jian Wushuang by her side. Of course, they were willing to give that up to a certain extent because it was only the first position token. There were a total of 6 position tokens, and the genius disciples around would have opportunities to compete for the other 5 tokens. There was no need to challenge that terrifying Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang noticed how the attitude of those people around him have changed. He knew that he had shown them enough to make them fearful of him and was pleased. "Big sister, let's go," said Jian Wushuang. The surrounding crowd immediately gave way to Jian Wushuang and the others. Little brother, Zhuo Bing stared at Jian Wushuang incredulously. She even wondered if Jian Wushuang, who was standing in front of her, was really her little brother. She was worried sick when she knew that Pang Dao had targeted Jian Wushuang before, but who knew that Jian Wushuang was not bothered at all. Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong had weird expressions on their faces. Jian Wushuang smiled helplessly. "Everyone. I know you have a lot of questions, but we have to get out of here first." "Yes, yes." Zhuo Bing and the others agreed. Jian Wushuang and his group made their way out using the path that was opened up for them. However, someone was not going to let them leave so easily. In that hidden independent space. I'm surprised by this young man. That Pang Dao guy who was killed by him had the power of peak divine demon but had no chance to crush the token in his hand. Haha. It seems that was not enough to put pressure on Jian Wushuang. In that case, the Crimson Stone Saint smiled in a weird demeanor and 2 white tokens appeared in his hand. Those 2 white tokens were instantly tossed out. Jian Wushuang, Zhuo Bing, and the others were about to leave the crowd as those genius disciples around had suppressed the greed in them. No one was going to do anything to stop them. At this moment, bang, bang. The ground underneath Jian Wushuang's feet suddenly cracked open and 2 bright white lights shot up. The 2 white lights appeared right next to Jian Wushuang, one on each side. Jian Wushuang frowned and subconsciously waved his hand, catching both white tokens. The sudden change of events caught Jian Wushuang by surprise. Zhuo Bing, the others next to him, and those genius disciples from various sects around were all stunned. The first token position which appeared before that everyone was fighting for had ended up in the hands of Zhuo Bing. No one dared to fight for that token because of Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, 2 more position tokens appeared at the same time and both fell directly into Jian Wushuang's hands. The 2 tokens plus the one with Zhuo Bing added up to a total of 3 tokens altogether. Jian Wushuang had 3 tokens. Those genius disciples from various sects were consumed by jealousy. Jian Wushuang looked at the 2 position tokens in his hand and frowned. The position tokens were supposed to appear in every corner of the inner area, but now 3 of them appeared at the same time in the area where I'm located. It might be a coincidence for the first one, but these two were sent directly to me. How could it be a coincidence? It looks like I was intentionally put in this situation. Jian Wushuang seemed to have figured it out. His gaze became gloomy all of a sudden. He knew that all of this was deliberately plotted by someone, and there could only be one person who could control when and where these tokens appear in the tomb. Crimson Stone Saint. That old guy, is he targeting me? Jian Wushuang murmured. Those people around who had given way for Jian Wushuang and his group to leave had once again encircled them. There were hundreds of genius disciples from various sects and all of them with their fiery eyes were staring at the 2 position tokens in Jian Wushuang's hands. One of the first-class divine demons said, "Jian Wushuang, you are indeed strong. We will let go of that position token with the Ice Queen, but I hope you would hand over those 2 position tokens to us." The first-class divine demon was quite polite, or perhaps he was just cautious and did not take immediate action to snatch it. He hoped that Jian Wushuang would take the initiative to hand the tokens over. Yes, the first position token is fine, but these 2 must be given away. There are only 6 position tokens. You already have one. You can't be too greedy. Jian Wushuang, give it away. There were a few first-class divine demons around who acted as representatives and all of them tried to coerce Jiang Wushuang into giving up his tokens. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. He knew that these genius disciples were horrified by his powers, hence they were willing to give up on a single token. However, to allow Jiang Wushuang 3 position tokens which accounted for half of the 6 available seats, they were not going to let that happen. Little brother. Zhuo Bing and the others also looked at Jian Wushuang. They were calm. Although Jian Wushuang had attained 2 more position tokens, it was not something good. Jian Wushuang glanced at Shuabing, but he was actually deep in his thoughts. Big sister is very keen at getting a seat to be enlightened by Fengtian's scroll, so the first position token must be hers. I also need a position token for myself. As for Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong, though they had not expressed their intentions, they are also extremely eager for those position tokens. Now that I have 3 tokens, the last token should be assigned to one of them, which currently is just. After pondering for a moment, Jian Wushuang had made up his mind. He needed all 3 tokens. How could he give them up? Big sister, give me your token, said Jian Wushuang. Shuabing did not hesitate and immediately took out her token. Jian Wushuang took it and said, all of you, get out of the battlefield. Get out from the battlefield? Shuabing's expression changed. Chapter 2435. Besieged little brother, are you thinking of? Shuabing frowned and looked at Jian Wushuang. She had figured out what Jian Wushuang was about to do. Just leave it to me and don't worry. I know what I am doing. Jian Wushuang gave her a reassuring smile. Shuabing contemplated and sighed. Okay, but you must be careful. If it doesn't work, hand over 1 or 2 of those tokens. I know. I have Pang Tao's safety token now. If there's danger, I'll just crush the safety token and leave, said Jian Wushuang. Shuabing finally gave in. Well, go now. Shuabing signaled the rest and walked towards the battlefield's edge with Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong. Let them go. The crowd around immediately gave way. Those genius disciples were after the position tokens and saw Shuabing giving hers to Jian Wushuang. They have decided to only deal with Jian Wushuang since all the 3 position tokens were with him, hence they could not wait for Shuabing and the others to leave. After Shuabing and the rest walked out of the crowd, they stood at the battlefield's edge and watched instead of leaving the area. Junior sister, are we really just watching from here? Ling Dan sought confirmation from Shuabing. We can only place our trust in little brother. Besides, you've seen his strength and power. We may not be able to help much, said Shuabing. Miss Shuabing is right. Junior brother Wushuang has been hiding his true potential from the beginning. No one knows how strong he is exactly. Judging from his confident look, the many genius disciples might not be able to harm him at all. We just have to look from afar for now. Besides, junior brother Wushuang has Pang Tao's safety token. He can just crush it if he senses danger, added Zhong Yi. Shuabing and the others had left the battlefield while Jian Wushuang remained encircled by those genius disciples from various sects. The 3 position tokens are in Jian Wushuang's hands. Those genius disciples present were greedily eyeing the 3 tokens. Jian Wushuang flipped his hands, and the 3 position tokens went into his interspatial ring. That provoked those genius disciples around with their expressions turning ugly. Jian Wushuang, we respect your ability and have agreed not to snatch the first token from you and your group. Don't push our limits. Yes. Although you are capable, push past our limits and we'll go after you. When that happens, it will be your dead end. Jian Wushuang, I advise you not to be so full of yourself. A few first-class divine demons started yelling. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly as he swept his gaze around. The 3 position tokens are indeed in my hands, but I can't hand over the tokens for nothing. If you really want them, come and grab it from me. So bold. Since you are so stubborn, you can't blame us. Let's kill him together. Kill him and all the 3 tokens will be up for grabs. Attack. About hundreds of genius disciples from various sects charged at the same time. Among them, there were nearly 10 first-class divine demons. They believed with their combined attacks a true peak divine demons, even a top-tier one would not be spared. Let's do it. Shuabing and the others were solemnly watching from outside the battlefield with some worries in their hearts. Boom. 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 Suddenly, an overwhelming attack came down on Jian Wushuang. The attacks came from all directions and there were so many of them that Jian Wushuang could not avoid it all. Nonetheless, Jian Wushuang did not intend to avoid them at all. With the strength of his right arm, his blood mountain sword hummed softly and a majestic sword essence manifested itself. With him achieving the complete sword principle realm, Zhen Wushuang's sword essence was more powerful than before. The sword essence greatly influenced his surroundings. Zhen Wushuang himself seemed to have evolved into a black hole that was able to consume everything. In the middle of the black hole, a bunch of sword lights came forth. The sword lights were ferociously firing out like a rain of swords. Those atrocious attacks that were aimed at Zhen Wushuang were instantly drowned by the rain of swords. The attacks were soon sent scattering in all directions. That was Shenluo sword's principle, the qi coalesce. Did he just parry off all our attacks with a sword principle? His swordsmanship is powerful. Be careful, don't let him escape. The many genius disciples around began to locate where Zhen Wushuang was, albeit just recovering from the shock. After the sword rain dissipated, Zhen Wushuang's figure magically moved. Wow! Zhen Wushuang's figure appeared in a void. Nearly 20 genius disciples in the void's vicinity immediately reacted. Rumble, a series of attacks were fired. Nonetheless, Zhen Wushuang did use any sword principle to resist these attacks. He submitted himself to the assaults instead. The attacks shuttled past his body without touching any substance. That was obviously not Zhen Wushuang's body. Hes there. No, Hes there. There is also one here. A series of exclamations sounded, and the many geniuses who besieged Zhen Wushuang discovered that 5 Zhen Wushuangs appeared on the battlefield at the same time. Adding in the one that they had just launched an attack on, there should be a total of 6 images. Those 6 Zhen Wushuangs were exactly the same in appearance and demeanor. They could not tell which one was real. These are spacetime shadows. Only those who had learned and apprehended spacetime law could do this. Goodness, and he can create 6 spacetime shadows at the same time. He must have a great understanding of spacetime law, perhaps has very close to the first stage spacetime apparition. Spacetime apparitions can only trick the naked eyes, but not one's soul. With Soul Power 1, you can discern which of these 6 are merely shadows. Those genius disciples released their soul powers in the direction of Zhen Wushuang. However, what their souls found? All 6 are shadows. How could that be? There, his real body is there. An exclamation sound came abruptly, and everyone looked around only to find that on a hill at the edge of the battlefield, a young man holding a sword was watching them with interest. That person was Zhen Wushuang. While they were busy identifying which of these 6 shadows was Zhen Wushuang, he had already broken free from their siege and went to the battlefield's edge. Chapter 2436. You've pissed me off too. Too fast. Junior brother Wushuang's apprehension of spacetime law has probably already been infinitely close to the first stage. None of these genius disciples could keep up with him. Zhongyi and the others were shocked. They were worried that Zhen Wushuang would not be able to face so many genius disciples single-handedly, but Zhen Wushuang's speed had thrown them off by surprise. With such terrifying speeds and such high-level apprehension of the spacetime law, no wonder Zhen Wushuang was not afraid of these disciples' siege. Keep on attacking. Kill him. Although the 100 genius disciples saw Zhen Wushuang's terrifying speed, they were not about to give up. Their attacks came firing like swarms of bees. Previously, Zhen Wushuang could easily cope with their siege. It was an extravagant hope for those people to attack him when he had already broken through their siege. Not giving up yet. All right, I'll play along. Zhen Wushuang smirked, his figure evolved once again. Whiff, 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 whiff. 6 spacetime shadows appeared at the same time and their speeds were fast. Where is he? Find him quick. The genius disciples roared and relied on their soul powers to again locate Zhen Wushuang's real body. At the same time, Zhen Wushuang's body appeared in another void some distance away from them. He was already halfway sitting down in that void with his brows jumping like he was having fun. Damn, Hes too fast. We can't keep up with him. No, I can't catch up to him at all. Hes just playing with us. What do we do now? Those genius disciples finally understood what was going on. Among them was a first-class divine demon from one of the big sects. He was a strong man with a solid back and tapered waistline. That man was holding a giant axe while keeping an eye on Zhen Wushuang with raging anger. Despite his anger, That man kept his sense. He's too fast. We can't do anything to him at all. We can only kill him if he fights us head-on instead of avoiding us. The strong man snorted. He turned his gaze slowly towards Shuabing and the others who were not far away. The Ice Queen is his eldest sister. If we can capture her, we can force Jian Wushuang to face us. The strong man wore a cold and hard expression and had secretly made a decision in his heart. Everyone, let's capture the Ice Queen first. As long as the Ice Queen is in our hands, we don't have to worry about Jian Wushuang not handing over the position tokens. The strong man yelled as he dashed towards the direction of Shuabing and the rest. The many genius disciples around were startled when they heard the strong man bellowed, and all of them immediately reacted thereafter. Yes, the Ice Queen is close with this brat. As long as we capture her, we can do as we wish. Haha, we can't do anything to Jian Wushuang, but we can target the Ice Queen. Hurry up, don't let the Ice Queen escape. Around 100 genius disciples turned around and zoomed towards Shuabing's direction. They knew they were unable to harm Jian Wushuang, who had a terrifying speed, but the Ice Queen was not as fast. Damn it! Shuabing, Ling Dan, and the rest saw what was coming as their facial expressions drastically changed. Shameless! Shuabing cursed. Junior sister, run quickly, Ling Dan repeatedly cried. Shuabing turned around and left without hesitation. She did not want to fall into the hands of those mad genius disciples to be used as a bargaining chip against Jian Wushuang. However, while Shuabing turned and fled, Jian Wushuang, who had been sitting in the void, took everything in with his cold gaze. His body instantly came sweeping down. In just a split second, he passed those genius disciples and first appeared behind Shuabing. He stood protectively over Shuabing. Haha! Jian Wushuang, so you have finally decided to fight. The strong man laughed out loud. They intended for Jian Wushuang to fight them head-on instead of avoiding them with his shadows so that they could kill Jian Wushuang together. They had achieved their goal. Little brother. Shuabing's expression sank. She had never expected herself to become Jian Wushuang's burden. If she had known any better, she would have listened to Jian Wushuang and went off as far as she could, away from the battlefield. Jian Wushuang had to fight head-on with those genius disciples because of their siblings' relationship. Just when those genius disciples were delighted by Jian Wushuang's will to fight, Jian Wushuang raised his eyes and locked them on those disciples with a horrifying flash. Congratulations to guys, because you have pissed me off. Jian Wushuang's cold voice echoed throughout the area. His face resembled Shura one as he was ready to kill. He had not intended for a massacre. After all, there were 100 genius disciples from various sects in the Wuxia wilderness in front of him. Most of these sects were not powerful, but there were several big sects. If he had killed any of them, it could have resulted in him declaring war on those sects. Although they were all fighting for the position tokens, being subject to the fate of life and death, they tried not to make any unnecessary moves. Therefore, if it was not necessary, Jian Wushuang would not want to kill. When he faced the siege of 100 genius disciples, he had only relied on his speed to break through the circle and simply played a trick on them. He was hoping that they would just admit defeat and give up on fighting. Jian Wushuang thought that he was being kind and merciful. Who would have thought that those disciples took his kindness for granted and went directly for Shuabing to threaten him? Shuabing was his big sister. Although they had only met for the first time in Saint's tomb, Shuabing took care of him and even tried to stand up for him. She offered him her own safety token, which moved Jian Wushuang very much. That was the true affection of a family member. Jian Wushuang would not tolerate those unscrupulous genius disciples who wanted to harm his family members. That was the last straw. It had angered Jian Wushuang and awakened his desire to kill. It was ridiculous that those genius disciples were blinded by their desire for the position token that they could not feel Jian Wushuang's wrath. They would not be bothered even if they felt it. Let's fire together. The strong man shouted, and once again, the 100 genius disciples attacked. Chapter 2437, Massacre. There were 100 genius disciples, and among them were 10 first-class divine demons. With such a huge lineup, even a peak divine demons would admit defeat and flee. Due to that, Those genius disciples were extremely confident in facing Jian Wushuang. So what if you're powerful? I don't believe alone you can face off 100 of us. The strong man had a wide grin. Jian Wushuang, who was standing in the void in front of him, transformed into several shadows. The strong man curled his lips. Do you still want to run away from the fight? I'll hunt down the Ice Queen if you run away. As soon as that strong man finished his sentence, Jian Wushuang's figure appeared in the crowd without a warning. The void filled with a sense of bone-chilling atmosphere that they even spotted snow falling. At the same time as the falling snow, a dreamy swordlight lit up. The swordlight completely integrated with the void's snowflakes. The first style of purple blood sword skill, falling snow. A swordlight swept across and 13 heads instantly flew out at the same time. All 13 heads still had that crazed, ferocious look when they were being decapitated from their necks. What? The people around him were shocked. There was no way that 13 heads could be thrown out at the same time. Such a scene was rare. The swordlight fell along with falling snowflakes and Jian Wushuang's figure disappeared once again. When he appeared again, Jian Wushuang was still in the crowd and in front of him stood more than a dozen genius disciples, including a first-class divine demon. Jian Wushuang wielded his sword. It was just a simple front stab across with his sword and there was an instant rumbling, the void was filled with blood and the whole world seemed to have completely plunged into a Shuraz hell with blood everywhere. Jian Wushuang, the sword in his hand, and even the sword technique that he used were completely turned into blood. That was the fourth style of purple blood sword technique, Blood Demon. The first-class divine demon was the first to react to Jian Wushuang's sword. Hurry up, let's act together and block his sword. The first-class divine demon was terrified. If he was alone, he would not have dared to parry off Jian Wushuang's sword, but it was different when there were more than a dozen of them together. Hearing his shouts, more than a dozen genius disciples around immediately took action. A series of brutal attacks superimposed on top of each other and bombarded Jian Wushuang's bloody sword. Boom! There was a loud noise when the two forces of attacks collided. The area was completely reduced to a sea of blood. In the center of the blood sea, a defense formed by more than a dozen genius disciples collapsed. The blood-red swordlight crushed everything and penetrated into the group. Numerous smaller blood-colored swordlights came out from the larger swordlight and formed a huge blood-colored sword net. The net had more than a dozen genius disciples within it. Damn it! The expressions of those genius disciples drastically changed. Swoosh! The sound of those small swordlights entering their body came repeatedly, and more than a dozen genius disciples, except for the first-class divine demon who crushed the safety token and escaped at the nick of time, had their divine bodies cut into several pieces or even dozens of pieces by the sword net. Blood and flesh scattered everywhere. Those genius disciples were ruthlessly killed in a blink of an eye. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang's figure disappeared again. When he appeared again, he was in front of the strong man who shouted fiercely before. There was another first-class divine demon who stood beside that strong man. For Jian Wushuang, there was no difference between first-class divine demons and second-class divine demons. Jian Wushuang drew out his sword. In that second when his sword was swung across, ripples appeared in the void. Time seemed to be completely frozen. That was Jian Wushuang's self-invented spacetime sword technique, the first style, cutting snow. That strong man had a feeling like never before. He knew that death was near. His eyes were filled with terror and without any hesitation, he grabbed his safety token. Just when he was about to crush his safety token. Boom! A huge blow of soul power penetrated into his consciousness and bombarded his soul. It was a soul attack secret technique, 3 golden divine light. Jian Wushuang's soul attack skill was not strong. After all, he had yet to recover his power to the level of a divine demon realm. His soul attack skill was just detrimental to ordinary second-class or third-class divine demons. Luckily, although that strong man was a first-class divine demon, his soul power was not strong and probably only at the level of a second-class divine demon. In addition, he was defenseless as he was not prepared for an attack on his soul. That made him miss the opportunity to crush his safety token. Swoosh! The blurry swordlight swept across and cut that strong man's head off. Before breathing his last, the strong man was in a state of stupor. He's not only skillful with a sword but also good at launching soul attacks. The strong man died. The first-class divine demon who was beside him saw that the situation was no good, hence he crushed his safety token and fled. Jian Wushuang took away the strong man's interspatial ring before his body disappeared again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Jian Wushuang's figure repeatedly disappeared and reappeared among the crowd. He was too fast, making it almost impossible for those genius disciples to catch hold of him. Every time he appeared, he was accompanied by a terrifying sword light. The sword light was invincible. No one could resist it. Regardless of first-class or second-class divine demons, those who had a safety token instantly crushed it to save their own lives. Those without one would be dead in no time. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. His repeated appearances sent heads flying. Those headless bodies fell down like raindrops. In an instant, Jian Wushuang had disappeared and appeared about 7 times, back and forth, which was enough to scare the remaining genius disciples witless. Run! Run now! The genius disciples who were still alive screamed and frantically fled into the surrounding void at top speeds. Everyone was running for their lives. They did not stop until they were in the void, which was further away from the battlefield. After that, with horrified eyes, they turned and looked towards the battlefield ahead. Chapter 2438. Big Trouble. The battlefield looked like an inferno itself. Blood covered the grounds, reflecting its crimson colors to the sky. Headless bodies were scattered everywhere, and they were already considered pleasant-looking. There were many other corpses that were slashed open by the sword with its blood and flesh splattered across. One could not even put their body parts back together. The thick stench of blood filled the air, making it nauseating. Among those who were lucky enough to have survived, there were many genius disciples who had seen a lot in their lives, but they still could not help but felt shaken by such sight. In the center of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang was floating at a low altitude with his blood mountain sword's tip pointing towards the ground as blood glided and dripped down his sword. At that moment, he was like the god of death's statue. In such a short time, his figure had only disappeared and reappeared 7 times. However, he had killed at least 70 or 80 genius disciples during his 7 reappearances. Bear in mind that the total number of genius disciples was only up to 100 people. In that brief moment, he had already slaughtered more than half of them. Only 30 to 40 lucky geniuses escaped. Hes the devil himself. Someone shouted in horror. The word devil also appeared in everyone's minds. Some people were horrified, some were stunned, and some were almost mortally devastated. Junior brother, senior sister. Screams of anguish turned up one by one, and the entire battlefield was filled with incomparable sadness. Jian Wushuang, you dare kill our disciples from Snow Sun Sect? Just you wait, we from the Snow Sun Sect will never let you get away with this. A second-class divine demon disciple from Snow Sun Sect pointed his finger at Jian Wushuang, screaming in extreme devastation with his slightly trembling voice. It was understandable why he felt that way. The Snow Sun Sect was a big sect after all and had 8 disciples who entered Saint's tomb. Among them were 2 first-class divine demons. However, in that short massacre carried out by Jian Wushuang, only 2 of them survived. That's right, we from Sky Shadow Sect will also avenge our dead disciples. Jian Wushuang, be prepared for your death. With such mindless killing of various sects' disciples, not even Narcissus Island could back you up. Growls were continuously heard. The geniuses that were lucky enough to survive stared deadly at Jian Wushuang. Due to their distance from Jian Wushuang, they were not afraid that he would come and slaughter them, hence the fear in their hearts began to disperse to be replaced with surging hatred and grudge. Jian Wushuang raised his head slowly, looking at all those geniuses' facial expressions and hearing those words that they shouted at him. The corners of his mouth curved upwards and gave a smile of disdain. Jian Wushuang truly did not care. Geniuses? A bunch of amateurs like that could be regarded as geniuses? What a joke! Jian Wushuang retracted the Blood Mountain sword. Not wasting another moment to glance at the so-called geniuses. He turned around and walked towards Ju Bing and the rest. As for those disciples, although they were still yelling and shouting claiming that they wanted vengeance, none of them dared to take action or even took a step forward. The reason being they would probably die under Jian Wushuang's sword if they went up. Seeing that Jian Wushuang did not pay attention to them, their shouts got even more heated. It was certain that they had also reported those occurrences to their respective elders and experts. Little brother, junior brother Wushuang, Zhuo Bing, Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, Su Tong, and all the disciples from Narcissus Island and Ancient Star Temple came before Jian Wushuang. The way they looked at him was filled with respect and even fear. The way Jian Wushuang was killing just a minute ago not only terrified those genius disciples who attacked him but also made those from his side horrified. Even Zhuo Bing, who was Jian Wushuang's own sister, had a slight fear in her eyes at that moment. She had only first met Jian Wushuang in Saint's Tomb. After a few days of coming in contact with him, Jian Wushuang had left her an impression of being soft-spoken, sophisticated, easy to talk to, and a very calm temperament. Not only her, but all the disciples from Narcissus Island also felt that way. However, who would have thought that as soon as he started killing, he could be so terrifying? He was simply a devil, an ultimate god of death. Most importantly, he had his massive abilities to rely on. Little brother, are you alright? Zhuo Bing asked carefully. I'm okay, just got into some small troubles. Jian Wushuang smiled. Towards those geniuses who tried to kill him, he was the ultimate god of death or devil, but towards Zhuo Bing and those close to him, Jian Wushuang was still as soft-spoken, sophisticated, and modest. Little troubles? Zhuo Bing and the rest smiled wryly. Zhong Yi exclaimed, Junior brother Wushuang, the mess you've gotten into is not little. You've got yourself in big trouble. You killed 70 to 80 people in just an instant. These people are genius disciples from various sects I had counted. Among the ones you killed were disciples from close to 20 different sects. Although most of them are not from very powerful sects, there are still quite a few big sects among them. Most importantly, you had killed Pang Dao. Zhuo Bing, Ling Dan, and Su Tong's faces turned gloomy. Yes, Pang Dao. That was crucial. Pang Dao was not only one of the 12 minor kings. Most importantly, he was also one of the most outstanding genius disciples from the Great Compassion sect. His teacher was the top elder from the Great Compassion sect, the #1 sword cultivator of Wuxia Wilderness, Fan Zhenxian. Having a disciple like that died under Jian Wushuang's sword, how could the Great Compassion sect ignore it? How would that be possible? Although this is Saint's Tomb, one should not have been blamed for killing another while competing for the position token where life and death were all up to fate. What you have done is really too big of a deal. Even we of Narcissus Island may not be able to endure pressures from so many sects including the Great Compassion sect's fury, continued Zhong Yi. Besides, even if we were strong enough to bear it, the Great Compassion sect and other sects must feel dissatisfied in their minds. They'll do whatever they can to deal with you. If they're not able to deal with you in the open, they would use all kinds of underhanded tricks. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that I'm afraid your forthcoming days will not be pleasant, junior brother Wushuang. Senior brother Zhong Yi is right. Those sects all look holier than thou, they certainly would not let this go easily. Su Tong joined in as well. Perhaps, but I wouldn't be too worried. Let them come. It's useless to feel regretful now since I've already done it. Jian Wushuang smiled with a relaxed look as usual. He never regretted killing. Besides, killing one or many were both acts of killing. The only difference for him was whether they deserved to be killed. In fact, he was trying to be merciful at that time, but those geniuses from various sects were seeking death. Jian Wushuang could only comply with their wishes. Chapter 2439, Fury Ling Dan looked at Jian Wushuang. Junior brother Wushuang, you don't seem to be worried at all. If I were you and got in such big trouble, I would have probably been scared to death and wouldn't dare to stay in Wuxia Wilderness, let alone Ancient Star Temple. Jian Wushuang gave out a big laugh. Haha. As a matter of fact, the situation isn't as bad as you think. After all, the people that I've killed were those drooling over the position token in my hand. They were killed because they tried to take it from me. In Saint's tomb, life and death in those battles for opportunities have always been up to fate. Those sects won't be able to point fingers. However, what senior brother Zhongyi just said reminded me that it's easy to dodge an attack out in the open, but harder to prevent one in the dark. If those sects are looking for trouble with me, I'll just endure it. There's nothing to worry about. However, I'm more worried about them playing tricks, such as making a move on my parents just for revenge. Father, mother? Zhuo Bing's face changed. Her father, Zhuo Yunfeng, was only in half-step divine demon realm, and her mother Luo Xinqin was only had a common chaotic realm cultivation level. If those sects intended to seek revenge and sent any of their divine demons, the Zhuo couple would not be able to withstand them. Little brother, what should we do? Zhuo Bing looked over. Jian Wushuang squinted. Father and mother live in Anzhou Commandery. It would take time for even the nearest sect to do anything to them. In a minute, I'll request Elder Wujian to send people over to Anzhou Commandery to protect our parents. It would be best if they could relocate, or simply be brought to Narcissus Island. That's right, that's right. They must be protected immediately. Zhuo Bing kept nodding. Junior brother Wushuang, I'm now preparing to report what happened here to the second elder. Why not let me make the request for you, said Zhongyi. No need to be hasty. You don't need to report what happened to them because they will soon come over to find us. Jian Wushuang smiled. Zhongyi paused for a moment and immediately understood. At the same moment, in the wide glade outside of Saint's tomb, those leading elders from various sects of Wuxia Wilderness had gathered there and were quietly waiting. In one of the corners, haha, Linghe, looks like your Narcissus Island has produced a freak. Truly, he could fight a second-class divine demon during early-stage chaotic realm, and now he had passed a trial bridges challenge in Saint's tomb, obtaining the relics of Purple Blood Saint. This kid, Jian Wushuang, has a bright future ahead of him. Wujian, I heard that you were the one who brought Jian Wushuang onto Narcissus Island. That kid was also invited to join the Great Compassion Sect at the same time, and Fan Zhenxian from the Great Compassion Sect had even intended to take him as his personal disciple. You are truly something to be able to bring that kid under such conditions to Narcissus Island. Some elders from certain sects were surrounding the 3 Narcissus Island elders and casually chatting with a sense of flattery in their tones. When the word about Jian Wushuang's background started spreading in Saint's tomb, the elders from various sects naturally knew about it. Such an incredible demon had inevitably become the hottest topic among those elders. The elders from various sects felt envious, even jealous, toward Narcissus Island. They were jealous that Narcissus Island had such an unbelievable genius in sword principles. Given some time, this sword genius could probably jump up the ranks and hold a status among the gods. He could even progress towards becoming an undying saint after that. Such would obviously make those elders envious. The 2 elders from Narcissus Island and Elder Wujian were delighted from listening to those various sects' experts giving flattering words. Elder Wujian wore an obvious pride on his face and even looked over at the 7th elder next to him. Previously, the 7th elder had a few conflicts with him, especially when he gave Jian Wushuang the elder token and recommended him to participate in Saint's tomb. The 7th elder made things extra difficult for him as he did not look highly upon Jian Wushuang at all at that time. However, this 7th elder now kept quiet, stood in, and dare not look at Wujian at all. It was understandable, as the 7th elder himself felt really agonized as well. That kid has obviously an outer disciple. Who would have thought that he is such a big freak? Plus, he is a low-profile big freak who concealed his abilities and talents. Who would have known that with such terrifying talents, he was content to be only an outer disciple? If no one exposed his true background, I'm afraid all of the superiors on Narcissus Island would still be in the dark, except Wujian. The 7th elder secretly exclaimed. He acknowledged that he had been short-sighted over the issue of Jian Wushuang and was unable to recognize his talents, hence he had nothing to say when Wujian pridefully showed off at him. Nonetheless, he felt a sense of joy and excitement. At the end of the day, he was an elder from Narcissus Island and thus felt happy that they had such an amazing disciple. However, just when the 3 Narcissus Island elders were feeling joyful, rumbling and horrifying energy suddenly exploded on the glade. As the energy blew up, it caught the attention of all the experts on the glade. Various pairs of eyes looked over at the direction of where the energy exploded, and that was where those experts from the Great Compassion sect were. Swish, 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 swish. 5 figures had risen from the ground. Of those 5 people, 4 of them were elders from the Great Compassion sect who led the disciples. The 5th person was widely regarded as the #1 genius of the Great Compassion sect, as well as Wuxia Wilderness, the first-ranked 12 minor kings, Tu Chen Cheng. At that moment, they looked extremely furious with horrifying energy emitting from 5 of them. Linghe, your Narcissus Island disciple has such audacity. That explosive shout came from a Great Compassion sect elder whose cultivation level was at peak divine demon. Following that shout, the 5 experts directly appeared in front of the 3 elders from Narcissus Island. 5 bolts of peak divine demon energy had completely locked on them. That scene had made all the experts from various sects dumbfounded. What's the meaning of this? Why are the experts of the Great Compassion sect so angry at Narcissus Island? Maybe it is because those Narcissus Island disciples had some run-ins with those from the Great Compassion sect. However, it doesn't seem like those Narcissus Island disciples would have the galls to seek trouble with those from the Great Compassion sect. The experts were all puzzled. Not only them, but even the 2nd elder Linghe, Wu Jian, and the 7th elder from Narcissus Island were also completely stunned. My friends from the Great Compassion sect, what has caused such anger in you? Perhaps our disciples from Narcissus Island had offended you in Saint's Tomb? Elder Linghe asked with a tone of modesty. You still didn't know why we're so furious? The experts from the Great Compassion sect had their faces flushed red, obviously trying hard to suppress their anger. Chapter 2440, Resolution. Gentlemen, we honestly don't know how we could have offended your sect. Could you please explain in detail? Elder Linghe said. One of the Great Compassion sect's old men who were in purple robe coldly said, Your disciple from Narcissus Island killed our genius disciples in Saint's Tomb. It would be another matter if it was only a regular genius disciple, but Pang Dao was the one who he killed. What? All of the experts from various sects were caught by surprise. Pang Dao? Even Elder Linghe was dumbfounded. Pang Dao was one of the 12 minor kings who enjoyed great fame among the younger generation in Wuxia Wilderness. Naturally, all the experts from different sects knew about him. Elder Linghe looked at the purple-robed old man. Mr. Hanyun, you've got to be joking. Everyone knows that Pang Dao is one of the 12 minor kings and was ranked 6th. His battle strength is definitely not below peak divine demon. Besides, such a genius disciple would definitely have a safety token with him. With his powerful ability and the safety token, who would be capable of killing him in Saint's Tomb? The experts from other sects around them secretly nodded as well. It was indeed true that based on Pang Dao's abilities, even if he was besieged by many experts, he could always escape with his safety token the moment he realized he was in a life and death crisis. Killing him within Saint's Tomb unless Crimson Stone Saint did it himself was almost an impossibility. I'm not in a mood to joke with you. Pang Dao is truly dead and he was killed by Jian Wushuang, your genius disciple from Narcissus Island. Many people clearly saw that he killed Pang Dao with one sword stroke. Pang Dao didn't even get the chance to break his safety token. If you don't believe me, you could send a message out and ask, the purple-robed old man, Hanyun said coldly. Jian Wushuang? Elder Linghe, Wu Jian, and the 7th elder looked at each other as their expressions changed. Just as they were about to send a message to inquire. Linghe, your disciple from Narcissus Island has such a ruthless tactic. A furious shout broke out. Another few menacing bolts of expert energy dashed at the 3 Narcissus Island elders, and that was only the beginning. Narcissus Island. All right. Narcissus Island. We from Radiant Palace had a total of 8 disciples who went into Saint's Tomb and 6 of them died at Jian Wushuang's hand. Narcissus Island, we need a resolution. We from Crimson Heaven sect also have 4 disciples that died at Jian Wushuang's account. We from Pinnacle Tower have also lost 3 disciples to Jian Wushuang. Those voices of fury continuously resonated one after another. One sect came after another. The stronger ones had extremely similar stature as Narcissus Island. The weaker ones also had a few peak divine demons in residence. At that rate, there were close to 20 sects that came directly at them. All of these experts were burning with rage while staring at the three of them. They have all just received news about the massacre carried out by Jian Wushuang and had many disciples who died under his sword. Elder Linghe, Elder Wujian, and the seventh elder were stunned beyond words looking at so many sects coming toward them together. All those various sects experts around them were wearing extremely strange expressions as well. Haha, looks like we, the Great Compassion sect, are not the only ones who suffer a big loss to that Jian Wushuang. A great many other disciples have also died under his sword, huh? Hanyun smiled coldly, his smile was as sharp as a blade's edge. Linghe, all of us need an explanation from Narcissus Island, shouted Hanyu. Yes, there needs to be a resolution. Our disciples cannot die in vain. That Jian Wushuang is simply the devil. He killed so many genius disciples in one go without even blinking an eye. A person such as this cannot be kept alive in the world. Otherwise, he would bring major catastrophe to Wuxia wilderness. The experts from multiple sects who came at them started voicing out. Elder Linghe felt trapped. Although Narcissus Island was a big enough sect to be listed within the top 10 of Wuxia wilderness, when faced with so many sects at once was not an easy task, especially the Great Compassion sect. Under the continuous bombardment from those experts, Elder Linghe took a deep breath and finally spoke. Everyone, could you please give me some time and let me inquire what just happened so that I could give everybody an answer? Sure, you go and ask them yourself. It would be best to ask in detail to see if we lied about Jian Wushuang starting a massacre in Saint's Tomb and killing so many disciples from various sects, said Hanyun. Elder Linghe did not hesitate and immediately sent an inquiry message. Of course, the person she asked was Zhongyi. Zhongyi soon answered her and explained the entire matter in great detail. After a long moment, Elder Linghe finally gave a long exhale. Second Elder, is it true what they have said? Jian Wushuang really killed Pang Dao and all these genius sect disciples? Elder Wujian and seventh elder both looked at Elder Linghe. In their minds, they could not come to believe any of it. It was not that they did not believe Jian Wushuang had the guts to do such a thing, it was really because they did not believe he had such abilities. After all, Jian Wushuang was currently only in the chaotic realm. With a heavy expression and under the scrutiny of Elder Wujian and seventh elder, Elder Linghe nodded. It's true. Both Elder Wujian and the seventh elder were dumbfounded. Linghe, you can finally verify it, can't you? Hanyun once again looked over. Elder Linghe raised her head to look directly at Hanyun and those experts from various sects who came at them before deepening her voice and said, Everyone, I've clarified what has happened. Jian Wushuang did kill Pang Dao in Saint's Tomb, as well as many of your genius disciples. However, the issue began with them coveting those 3 position tokens that Jian Wushuang had obtained. They took action and besieged Jian Wushuang in order to get his tokens. Other than that, our disciple told me that Jian Wushuang did not intend to start a bloodbath. He was only planning to avoid fighting by relying on his own speed and finesse so that your disciples would retreat from the difficulty of targeting him. However, your disciples chose to attack his big sister in order to force Jian Wushuang to threaten him into battle and accept their challenges. It was only at that time when Jian Wushuang started killing. The fights for those positions in Saint's Tomb has always been extremely frenzied. Many genius disciples would lose their lives in every competition. Narcissus Island also suffered many huge losses over those position competitions in Saint's Tomb. It was a fair fight after all, and we left everything up to fate, hence we had never blamed it on anyone and neither had we ever thought of seeking revenge from the opposing sects. However, you can only blame their insufficient skills since your disciples were killed for snatching those position tokens from Jian Wushuang. How could you blame it on Narcissus Island, now? As for demanding us to offer a resolution, that's even more laughable. We of Narcissus Island will not offer a resolution. Chapter 2441. The target of all we from Narcissus Island will not offer a resolution, Elder Linghe said with absolute firmness, and she had enough reasons to do so. It was because Narcissus Island was on the side of reason that she could stand her ground. Linghe, what do you mean by that? Are our sect geniuses meant to just die in vain? Hanyun growled softly. It's a shame that your disciples died, but they are to be blamed for not being skillful enough. Narcissus Island can't take the blame. After all, they were the ones who took the initiative to snatch Jian Wushuang's position tokens. He couldn't just not defend himself and present his head to the others, could he? Elder Linghe said. Hearing her words, they could not argue even though those experts were angry. The fact that they were coveting for what another person had obtained and tried snatching it away, but only to get killed instead due to their own technical deficiencies. That was not something they could blame the other person for. You're right, Linghe. The competition for position tokens has always been something we leave up to fate. Our disciples died from their own undoing and could only blame themselves. If that's the case, since Jian Wushuang possesses 3 position tokens, that would mean it's equally feasible for our Great Compassion Sect disciples to kill him during the token snatching process, said Hanyun. Of course, it's a battle of opportunities and there are bound to be occurrences of deaths, said Elder Linghe. Very well then, we're glad to have your word. Let's go. Hanyun waved his hand before those experts from the Great Compassion Sect turned around and left. As for the remaining other sects' experts, they could do nothing else but to follow suit after seeing that the Great Compassion Sect leaving despite still feeling dissatisfied. Elder Linghe, Elder Wujian, and 7th Elder gathered immediately upon the departure of those experts. 2nd Elder, it's apparent that Hanyun wants Jian Wushuang to die in Saint's tomb from his words. Why didn't you stop him? Elder Wujian frowned. Elder Linghe's voice lowered. Stop him? How to stop him? Jian Wushuang had a run-in with so many sects at once and got into such a big trouble. It's fortunate that this happened over the fight for opportunities and it wouldn't implicate Narcissus Island. However, if we still force our way through and defend him, how do you suppose we could negotiate with sects like the Great Compassion Sect? Are we to just watch the Great Compassion Sect destroy Jian Wushuang? Elder Wujian was not having it. It's something that can't be helped. He was the one who got himself into that mess and will have to bear the consequences. We from Narcissus Island could help him within our means. As for whether he could overcome this ordeal, it really depends on himself, said Elder Linghe. Elder Wujian kept quiet upon hearing that. Indeed, that was too big of an issue, making it impossible for Narcissus Island to completely defend Jian Wushuang. Wujian, you have the best relationship with Jian Wushuang among us 3 and also the only person who has his message token. Go ahead and have a good talk with him. Tell him what just transpired here, just so that he has some prior preparation, said Elder Linghe. Elder Wujian nodded slightly and took out Jian Wushuang's message token. Jian Wushuang, Elder Wujian immediately sent him a message. Elder Wujian, I knew you would immediately look for me. Jian Wushuang replied very soon with his absolutely calm tone. You've got into a big mess. Why are you not worried at all? Elder Wujian surprisingly said. Wasn't that about killing just 1 or 2 genius disciples? What's the big deal? Jian Wushuang smiled. What do you mean 1 or 2? You've killed a total of 70 to 80 geniuses from close to 20 sects. That aside, the most important part is that you even killed Pang Dao, Hes from the Great Compassion Sect and the personal disciple of Fan Zhenxian, said Elder Wujian. Jian Wushuang remained smiling. What's done is done, it's useless to regret. Elder Wujian, perhaps the reason you sent me a message is that you've been pressured by those other sects and the Great Compassion Sect, am I right? Elder Wujian nodded. Yes. Just a while ago, the Great Compassion Sect and those others came up to us. Even though we had sent them off, Narcissus Island can't forcibly protect you. After this, the Great Compassion Sect and their lot will find every means to make a move on you in Saint's tomb and avenge their disciples. Especially the Great Compassion Sect. You have to know a total of 30 Great Compassion Sect disciples have gone into Saint's tomb. Among them are 9 first-class divine demon, which includes Long Zishan and Yu Ouching, who are both listed in the 12 minor kings. They will definitely join forces to avenge Pang Tao's death. Aside from that, I'm afraid every sect's disciples in Saint's Tomb has already caught wind of the 3 position tokens in your possession by now. Even if they have no enmity against you, they will still seek you out just to snatch those position tokens from you. Which means that you have probably become everyone's target in Saint's Tomb. Everyone's target, huh? Jian Wushuang reacted, but without any sense of surprise. Setting the sect's grudges aside, it was only natural that he would have become everyone's target for just having 3 position tokens in his hands. Jian Wushuang, you need to constantly be careful in Saint's Tomb from here on. We from Narcissus Island can't help you too much. You can only rely on yourself. If push comes to shove, just give up on those 3 position tokens. If the situation is worse than that, just use Pang Tao's safety token and protect yourself. Although that would mean missing your chance to access the most precious opportunity in Saint's Tomb, it's always better than throwing your life away, said Elder Wu Jian. Jian Wushuang nodded. Understood. Oh yes, there's something I would like to ask Elder Wu Jian for help. It's about my parents. Aha, you're right. The tactics that these sects used are sometimes not exactly honorable. If they couldn't get you out in the open, they might play dirty like making a move on your parents. Don't worry, I shall send people to relocate your parents just to ensure they're all right, said Elder Wu Jian. Well then. Thank you for your efforts, Elder Wu Jian. Jian Wushuang was relieved. He was not worried about his own safety, but of his current lifetime's parents. As long as his parents were protected, he would feel more settled. Inside Saint's Tomb, all the disciples of Narcissus Island and Ancient Star Temple gathered around. How was it, little brother? Zhuo Bing and the rest looked at him. They knew that Jian Wushuang was communicating with an elder from Narcissus Island. It's as I predicted. Those sects couldn't involve Narcissus Island on this issue, but they would do whatever it takes to seek me for revenge. In addition, news of me possessing 3 position tokens has gone out. For the remaining period, I'll become the target of all in Saint's Tomb. My every move will be a difficult one, said Jian Wushuang. Chapter 2442, Staying in Inner Area Target of All? What should we do? Zhuo Bing panicked. Jian Wushuang smiled lightly. Well, it's actually not that big of a deal. My abilities are obvious and also I have a safety token. How simple do they think killing me is? However, all of you would run into plenty of trouble because of me, so you'd better leave the inner area. Leave the inner area? Zhuo Bing and the rest were all stunned. Jian Wushuang turned his wrist and took out 2 position tokens. How about this? Out of those 3 position tokens, I'll keep 1. Big sister will take 1. As for the last one, senior brother Ling Dan, senior brother Zhong Yi, and senior sister Su Tong can make the arrangements. Ling Dan, Zhong Yi, and Su Tong were slightly tempted. They were filled with an eagerness for the position token. However, they knew full well that those tokens were obtained by Jian Wushuang alone and he had borne a huge risk for that. Junior sister Zhuo Bing already has 1. I don't need it, said Ling Dan quickly and without any hesitation. Senior brother Zhong Yi, I've gotten quite a few benefits in Saint's Tomb this time around. I think you should take the position token, said Su Tong. Zhong Yi kept quiet for a while and nodded a little. I shall take it then. Thank you, junior brother Wushuang. Jian Wushuang mildly smiled. Temporarily leave the inner area with those tokens and hide out there for some time. You can return when the fighting and killings in the inner area are over, along with the Fengtian scroll opening up. In Saint's Tomb, the outer area was much bigger than the inner area. If they left for the outer area, genius disciples from other sects would not be able to easily snatch their tokens. After all, it would be difficult to just locate their whereabouts. Every time Saint's Tomb opened, a lot of geniuses who obtained those tokens would have chosen to hide in the outer area. Little brother, if we're going to the outer area, how about you? Aren't you coming with us? Zhuo Bing frowned. Jian Wushuang shook his head. I can't go. Besides, it's useless to go. Those sect's geniuses could still easily locate me. Why? Zhuobing and the rest could not understand. The outer area was a vast land. If Jian Wushuang hid there, would it not be impossible for those various sects' genius disciples to find him? However, Jian Wushuang smiled and explained, "Think about it, how did I manage to get all 3 position tokens at once?" Jian Wushuang's words surprised them. It was only then that they remembered what they saw when Jian Wushuang obtained the 3 position tokens. The 3 tokens had appeared in the most strange and mysterious fashion. The inner area was so large and the 6 tokens were supposed to appear one by one at different corners. However, 3 of those tokens appeared in the same area. The first token at least made sense as it was being pursued by everyone and fell into Zhuobing's hand in the end. However, the second and third tokens appeared simultaneously right next to Jian Wushuang, which was obvious that it was given directly to him. If they were supposed to randomly appear, that coincidence did not make sense. "Junior brother Wushuang, do you mean he has something to do with it?" Zhongyi frowned hard. Although he did not mention that person's name, everyone knew he was referring to the owner of Saint's tomb, Crimson Stone Saint. Although Crimson Stone Saint had long passed, his consciousness must have remained within the tomb in bits and pieces. Everything that happened in Saint's tomb was all within his control. The strange appearance of the 3 position tokens could have only one explanation. Crimson Stone Saint did that on purpose. He deliberately gave Jian Wushuang all 3 position tokens and made him the target for all, causing everyone to try and take it from him. Why? Why did Crimson Stone Saint want to do so? Zhongyi was puzzled. Who knows? Maybe he's only interested in me alone or wants something from me. Whichever is the case, that old fart has really locked his sights on me. Under such conditions, it doesn't matter where I go. As long as I'm still in Saint's tomb, I wouldn't be able to escape his grasp. Those geniuses could also easily find me with his hints. If that's the case, I'd rather just stay in the inner area instead of looking for a hideout and allow whatever needs to happen unfold, said Jian Wushuang calmly. Forget it then, just be extra careful, said Zhuobing. What she could only do at the moment was to give a word or 2 of advice. Otherwise, there was nothing else she could have done to help. I will, all of you go ahead. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. Zhuobing and Zhongyi quickly led the many disciples from Narcissus Island and Ancient Star Temple to leave for the outer area. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold once they were gone. He looked around the void and coldly said, "Hey old fart, I don't really know what you're trying to do, but if you are trying to find out my abilities or my background using those sect's geniuses, I'm afraid it's not that easy." Jian Wushuang's voice resonated outwards, but there was not a soul around. It did not seem like anyone heard his words either. However, Crimson Stone Saint could hear every word he said in the hidden isolated space. This kid's pretty smart. He knows my intention. I'll keep a close watch since that's the case. Crimson Stone Saint smiled as his consciousness was completely locked on to Jian Wushuang, watching his every move. In other parts of Saint's tomb's inner area, genius disciples from various sects were still waiting for the position token's appearance. While the frenzied fight for Jian Wushuang's 3 position tokens was occurring, only one other token appeared elsewhere and fell into the hand of Great Compassion Sect's Long Zishan after an intense battle. On an open field, 10 disciples from the Great Compassion Sect gathered. Their leader was the well-reputed Long Zishan. "Senior brother Zishan, you're still better than the rest. You get the token as soon as you take action. Moreover, the other sects immediately stop when you get it. They dare not continue fighting you. What's with the empty words? Senior brother Zishan is ranked 3 on the 12 minor kings. Unless they want to die, how will those sects' genius disciples have the guts to fight with him?" A few Great Compassion Sect disciples were brown-nosing Long Zishan. Long Zishan slightly smiled over their praises and felt a little proud inside. What hilarity! Either his abilities as the 3-ranked 12 minor kings or his identity as a genius disciple from Great Compassion Sect would have allowed him to do as he wished in Saint's tomb. Which disciples from regular sects dared to fight with him over the token? Right at that moment, the Great Compassion Sect's top genius, Tu Chen Cheng, who was staying outside of Saint's tomb, sent him a direct message. Upon receiving the message, Long Zishan's smiling face immediately froze while still sitting on the ground. Chapter 2443. Highly priced bounty. Junior brother Pang Dao died? Long Zishan was in disbelief. What? The Great Compassion sect disciples around him were also dumbfounded. How's that possible? How could senior brother Pang Dao get killed in Saint's tomb? Senior brother Pang Dao had a safety token, who was so skillful that senior brother Pang Dao couldn't even take out his safety token. Shouts rose one by one. The Great Compassion sect disciples were overwhelmed by surprise and even more fury. It's him, Zhen Wushuang. Long Zishan squinted. The image of a weak-looking young man with only a chaotic realm cultivation level had appeared in his mind. Naturally, Long Zishan did not pay much attention to Zhen Wushuang, and Pang Dao unexpectedly died in his hands. To be blamed, I shouldn't have let junior brother Pang Dao go to that area. Long Zishan's face wore a sense of regret and stood up the next moment. Elder Hanyun has an order. He wants us to do everything we can to kill Zhen Wushuang and avenging junior brother Pang Dao. Let's go. Let's first regroup with junior sister Ouching before looking for Zhen Wushuang. Long Zishan and the rest of the Great Compassion sect disciples immediately moved out. Meanwhile, countless different sects' genius disciples in Saint's tomb received the news. Good God! 100 geniuses besieging Zhen Wushuang alone had resulted in Zhen Wushuang slaughtering more than half of them. Even Pang Dao from the Great Compassion sect died in his hand. Is Zhen Wushuang's ability really that terrifying? I heard that the reason those geniuses attacked Zhen Wushuang was that he took a total of 3 position tokens in one go. My goodness, we've been waiting here for so long and didn't even see 1 position token, and Zhen Wushuang got 3 of them? No wonder he was attacked. After hearing the news, genius disciples from different sects were stunned by Zhen Wushuang's horrifying ability and coveted over those 3 position tokens that he possessed. However, an update soon arrived. 2 of the 3 position tokens that Zhen Wushuang possessed had been respectively passed to Ancient Star Temple's Ice Queen and Narcissus Island's Zhongyi. Both of them went and hid in the outer area. This news was deliberately spread by Ancient Star Temple and Narcissus Island. Their goal was to lighten Zhen Wushuang's burden. As expected, the genius disciples who were drooling over Zhen Wushuang's position tokens had their greed decreased a great deal after receiving the news. Such was the norm, as it was a lot less tempting when there was only 1 position token. For instance, Long Zishan of the Great Compassion sect, who also had a position token, and many knew about it too, but no one really wanted to seek trouble with him. Those various sects' genius disciples would rather wait for the last 2 position tokens' appearance than confronting Zhen Wushuang, since his abilities were much more horrifying than Long Zishan's. Therefore, quite a bit of pressure on Zhen Wushuang had been lifted. However, none of those sects were willing to let him off easily since he had offended them. After that news had gotten out, about 20 sects came together and posted a bounty. The subject was Zhen Wushuang, of course. The reward, 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power, 3 pinnacle ground treasures, and 1 divine demon nirvana elixir pill. That was only the reward for directly killing Zhen Wushuang. Even if he could not be killed, by cornering him into desperation and escaping with a safety token, one would also be rewarded with 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power and 3 pinnacle ground treasures. It caused a sensation in the entire Saint's tomb as word went out. Nobody would have thought that those sects would come together and post the bounty. Moreover, it was such a highly priced bounty. The rewards were ancient god divine power, pinnacle ground treasures, divine demon nirvana elixir. Ancient god divine power was not as exclusive as it could restore or upgrade a cultivator's divine power. One of the opportunities in Saint's tomb, the divine power ocean, was solely built with ancient god divine power. Furthermore, divine power ocean was personally built by Crimson Stone Saint. It contained an infinite amount of ancient god divine power at the cosmic scale. In comparison to the entire divine power ocean, 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power were next to nothing. However, that only applied to super experts who were undying saints, such as Crimson Stone Saint. For regular cultivators, 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power was really not a small number. In the ancient god realm, cultivators most commonly bartered with each other using ancient god divine power. In normal circumstances, a rather wealthy first-class divine demon would own around 1,000 ancient god divine power or even less. 10,000 ancient god divine power was a lot more compared to the possession of many peak divine demons. That was an enormous wealth to many genius disciples in Saint's Tomb. Ground treasures were mystical weapons. Even the most regular ground treasures were enough to catch the eyes of third-class and second-class divine demons. Pinnacle ground treasure could even make first-class divine demons drool. However, the rewards that those sects offered were a total of 3 pinnacle ground treasures. The aforementioned was still a secondary matter, though. The most precious and rare reward was the latter Divine Demon Nirvana Elixir. Divine Demon Nirvana Elixir was a priceless treasure to any divine demon. During Jian Wushuang's past life, when the old Dragon Master's dragon mount was killed by Emperor Bai, he used a Divine Demon Nirvana Elixir pill as a reward to seek revenge and had received the help of many divine demons. In order to obtain that pill, they agreed to his request without any hesitation. From that instance, one could see how important the Divine Demon Nirvana Elixir was. The elixir could help divine demons reach a breakthrough when they arrived at a certain juncture in their cultivation. For example, a second-class divine demon's breakthrough to first-class divine demon or a first-class divine demon's breakthrough to peak divine demon. The elixir could play an important role even during a peak divine demon's breakthrough attempt to ultimate god. Therefore, many divine demons were naturally excited over it. The elixir was extremely rare and very difficult to produce. It was a strenuous affair for any Wuxia wilderness sects to even produce one. Those sects actually took out one divine demon nirvana elixir as a reward to kill Jian Wushuang and avenge their disciples. That was enough to show that they were going all in to make sure Jian Wushuang had no survival chance. The results were obvious. The entire saint's tomb was in a stir as soon as the word had gotten out. Countless genius disciples from various sects went crazy over the high-priced bounty. Those who lost interest in Jian Wushuang and no longer had the intention of snatching from him his position token changed their minds after catching the news. That was understandable, as the combined value of 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power, 3 pinnacle ground treasures, and a divine demon nirvana elixir pill was equivalent to a position token. Once again, Jian Wushuang became the target for all the geniuses. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,